Something just shifted in the global financial system. Not in New York, not in London, not in Washington. The earthquake happened 7,000 miles away in Tokyo. And if you are holding cash right now, if you're sitting on dollars or euros waiting for clarity, you just missed the signal that tells you exactly where this is going. On Sunday, February 8th, 2026, Japan held an election that was not supposed to matter to the precious metals market. Japan is a stable democracy. Japan does not have coups. Japan does not have revolutions. Japan has boring, predictable elections where old men in suits get replaced by other old men in suits. Except this time, the old men lost. And the woman who won just announced that she is going to light the money printer on fire and use the ashes to build a new Japan. Her name is Sanae Takaichi. She is Japan's first female prime minister, and she just won the biggest electoral victory in post-war Japanese history. Her party, the Liberal Democratic Party, captured 316 seats out of 465 in the lower house of parliament. That is a supermajority. That is a two-thirds majority. That means she can override the opposition. That means she can pass any law she wants. That means she can rewrite the Constitution if she feels like it. And what she wants to do with that power is spend. Spend on stimulus, spend on defense, spend on infrastructure, spend until the debt-to-GDP ratio, which is already over 200%, becomes a number so large that economists will need new words to describe it. The market heard this message, and the market reacted instantly. Gold spiked, silver spiked. The Japanese stock market hit an all-time high. The yen collapsed. And if you understand what is happening in Japan right now, you understand what is about to happen to every fiat currency on the planet. Let me walk you through the mechanics of this, because this is not just a Japanese story. This is a global story. This is the story of what happens when a major economy decides that debt does not matter anymore. Takaichi ran on a platform that sounds insane if you are a fiscal conservative. She promised to suspend the 8% sales tax on food for 2 years. She promised to continue the 21.3 trillion yen stimulus package that was approved last year. That is $136 billion of government spending injected directly into the economy. She promised energy bill subsidies. She promised cash handouts. She promised food vouchers. She promised to make the Japanese people feel rich again, even if the wealth is an illusion built on printed money. And the Japanese people said yes. They said yes by a landslide. They gave her the largest mandate any Japanese leader has had in 70 years. Why? Because they are tired. They are tired of stagnation. They are tired of deflation. They are tired of watching their economy grow at 1% per year while the rest of Asia races ahead. They want growth. They want jobs. They want rising wages. And they do not care if the government has to borrow trillions of yen to make it happen. This is the psychology of the end-stage fiat system. When the debt becomes so large that paying it back is mathematically impossible, the only option left is to inflate it away. You cannot tax your way out of 200% debt to GDP. You cannot cut spending your way out. The only way out is to print money until the debt becomes worthless in real terms. And that is exactly what Takaichi is going to do. Now, you might be thinking, but this is Japan. Japan is unique. Japan has been running massive deficits for decades and nothing bad has happened. The yen is still a reserve currency. Japanese bonds still trade. Why should I care? You should care because Japan just crossed the Rubicon. For 30 years, Japan has been the laboratory for modern monetary theory. They have been testing the limits of how much debt a country can accumulate before the bond market revolts. And the answer, so far, has been a lot. Japan has proven that you can run deficits forever as long as your central bank buys the bonds and your population saves enough to absorb the issuance. But Takaichi is changing the experiment. She is not just running deficits to keep the lights on. She is running deficits to stimulate growth. She is actively trying to create inflation. She is trying to weaken the yen. She is trying to make Japanese exports competitive again by debasing the currency. And the market knows what that means. It means the yen is going to fall. It means Japanese government bonds are going to lose value in real terms. It means anyone holding yen-denominated assets is going to get silently robbed by inflation. So what do you do if you are a Japanese investor and you see this coming? You buy gold, you buy silver, you buy anything that cannot be printed. And that is exactly what happened on Monday. Gold rose 2.4% to $5,054 per ounce. Silver jumped 5.8% to $90. The Nikkei stock index hit a record high because stocks are a claim on real assets, and real assets hold their value when the currency collapses. The yen weakened because the market knows that Takaichi's policies require a cheap currency to work. This is the flight to hard assets in real time. But the Japanese story is just the beginning, because what Takaichi is doing in Japan is what every major economy will eventually do. The United States has debt to GDP of 125% and climbing. The European Union is drowning in debt. China is running massive stimulus to prevent real estate collapse. Every major economy is trapped in the same debt spiral. The only way out is to print. The difference is that Japan is doing it openly. Takaichi is not pretending fiscal responsibility matters. She is embracing the reality that the only way to keep the system running is to devalue the currency and hope growth can outrun inflation. This is the new playbook. And the rest of the world is watching. Now let me talk about the defense angle, because this is where the silver story gets even more interesting. Takaichi is not just spending on social programs, she's spending on defense, big time. She has promised to revise Japan's security and defense policies by December 2026. She wants to bolster Japan's offensive military capabilities. She wants to lift the ban on weapons exports. She wants to move Japan away from its post-war pacifist principles and turn it into a real military power. Why? Because Japan is scared. China is building bases in the South China Sea. China is sending warships around Taiwan. China is claiming the Senkaku Islands, which Japan administers. North Korea is launching missiles over Japanese territory. And the United States, Japan's main ally, is distracted. Trump is focused on the Western Hemisphere. Trump is negotiating with Xi Jinping. Trump just endorsed Takaichi publicly, but that does not mean American troops will fight for Japan if China attacks. So Japan has to build its own deterrent. Japan has to become self-sufficient. Japan has to be able to defend itself without relying on Washington. And building a military requires resources. It requires steel for ship hulls. It requires titanium for aircraft frames. It requires rare earth elements for precision-guided munitions. It requires semiconductors for command and control systems. And above all, it requires silver. Silver is the most conductive metal on Earth. Silver is used in missile guidance systems because it does not corrode and it transmits signals with zero loss. Silver is used in radar systems because it reflects electromagnetic waves better than any other material. Silver is used in electronic warfare systems because modern warfare is not fought with bullets. It is fought with jamming signals and cyber attacks. Silver is used in cruise missiles and fighter jets and destroyers and submarines. If Japan is going to build a fleet of advanced destroyers, if Japan is going to build a domestic missile defense shield, if Japan is going to build fifth-generation fighter jets, it is going to need tens of thousands of ounces of silver per unit. And Japan does not produce silver. Japan has no domestic silver mines. Japan has to import every single ounce. So the Japanese government is about to become a major buyer of silver on the global market, at the exact same time that industrial demand from solar panels and electric vehicles is already maxing out global supply. China is buying silver for solar panels. The United States is buying silver for electric vehicle charging infrastructure. India is buying silver for electronics manufacturing. And now Japan is entering the market with a blank check from the government to build a military that can stand up to China. This is a supply shock waiting to happen, and the market is starting to price it in. But here is the part that most people are missing. Takaichi's victory is not just about stimulus and defense spending. It is about the psychology of the electorate. The Japanese people just voted for a leader who promised them free money. They voted for a leader who told them that the government can solve all their problems by spending more. They voted for populism over fiscal discipline. And this is happening everywhere. Look at the United States. Trump won on a platform of tariffs and tax cuts. He did not win by promising to balance the budget. He won by promising to make people feel rich again, even if it means running massive deficits. Look at Europe. The far right is gaining ground in every country. And their message is the same. Spend more, protect our people, close the borders, print the money. The global electorate is done with austerity. They are done with responsible governance. They want results. They want growth. They want their standard of living to go up. And they do not care how much debt it takes to get there. This is the political economy of the 2020s, and it is extremely bullish for gold and silver. Because when governments spend, they print. When they print, the currency loses value. And when the currency loses value, people flee to hard assets. The smart money already knows this. That is why gold is up 72% year over year. That is why silver is trading near $90. That is why the mining stocks are hitting multi-year highs. The dumb money thinks this is a bubble. The dumb money thinks gold is overbought. The dumb money is waiting for a pullback to buy cheaper. But the pullback is not coming because the fundamentals are not changing. Japan is going to keep spending. The United States is going to keep spending. Europe is going to keep spending. And the central banks are going to keep printing to finance that spending. This is not a cycle. This is a regime change. Now let me talk about what this means for you. If you are holding cash, you are losing purchasing power every day. The inflation rate in Japan is rising. The inflation rate in the United States is sticky. The inflation rate in Europe is persistent. And the official numbers are lies. The real inflation rate, the one you feel when you buy groceries or pay rent, is much higher. Cash is not safe. Cash is a melting ice cube. If you are holding bonds, you are in even worse shape. Japanese bonds yield less than 1%, while inflation runs at 2%. That is guaranteed real loss. U.S. Treasuries yield around 4% with inflation at 3%. Your real return is 1%. That is not wealth preservation, that is slow robbery. If you are holding stocks, you are doing better. Stocks are claims on real businesses. Real businesses can raise prices. Real businesses can pass inflation on to customers. But stocks are also expensive. The S&P 500 is trading at all-time highs. Valuations are stretched. And if the economy slows, stocks will get hit. The only assets that make sense in this environment are hard assets: gold, silver, real estate, commodities. Things that cannot be printed. Things that hold their value when the currency collapses. And right now, gold and silver are telling you that the collapse is accelerating. The Japanese election was the spark, but the fire has been burning for years. Every major economy is trapped in a debt spiral. Every major central bank is printing money to keep the system afloat. And every smart investor is rotating out of paper and into metal. The question is not whether gold is going higher. The question is how high. Goldman Sachs says $5,400 by the end of 2026. Bank of America says $6,000. JP Morgan says $6,300. And those are conservative estimates. Those estimates assume that the system stays stable. They assume that governments do not panic. They assume that the bond market does not break. But what if the system does not stay stable? What if Japan's experiment fails? What if the yen collapses and triggers a currency crisis across Asia? What if the U.S. Treasury market freezes up because foreign buyers stop buying bonds? What if the European Central Bank has to choose between saving Italy or saving Germany? These are not hypothetical scenarios. These are real risks. And if any of them happen, gold does not go to 6,300. Gold goes to 10,000. Silver does not stay at 90. Silver goes to 200. The supermajority that Takaichi just won gives her the power to do whatever she wants. And what she wants is to spin Japan into prosperity. She wants to devalue the yen. She wants to reflate the economy. She wants to make Japan great again, even if it means destroying the currency in the process. The Japanese people gave her permission to do this. They voted for it. They want it. And the rest of the world is going to follow. Because once one major economy crosses the line and embraces unlimited spending, the others have no choice but to follow. If Japan devalues the yen, Korea has to devalue the won. If Korea devalues, China has to respond. If China responds, the United States has to defend the dollar. And the only way to defend the dollar in a currency war is to print more dollars. This is the race to the bottom. This is the end game of the fiat system. And gold is the only lifeboat. So here's the verdict. Takaichi's victory is not just a Japanese story. It is a global warning. It is the signal that the age of fiscal discipline is over. The age of unlimited spending has begun. And the only way to survive this environment is to own assets that cannot be printed. The market reacted on Monday. Gold up, silver up, stocks up, yen down. But this is just the beginning. The real move has not even started yet. Because the Japanese stimulus has not been deployed yet. The defense spending has not kicked in yet. The tax cuts have not been implemented yet. When those policies hit, when the money starts flowing, the inflation is going to accelerate. And when the inflation accelerates, the flight to gold is going to turn into a stampede. The Japanese just told you what is coming. The question is whether you are going to listen.